In 1983, Jimmy Snuka leaped off a steel cage at Madison Square Garden and landed on Don Muraco. That moment inspired Mick Foley, Tommy Dreamer, and an entire generation of wrestlers to enter the business. But everyone remembers Snuka. Almost nobody talks about the man who was lying there to catch him. Don Muraco was a two-time Intercontinental champion, the first ever king of the ring, and one of the greatest heels of his era. This is his story. Donald Muraco was born on September 10, 1949, at Sunset Beach on the Hawaiian island of Oahu. He was of native Hawaiian heritage, and he was adopted into an Italian and Portuguese family. Growing up in Paradise, young Don fell in love with professional wrestling by attending local shows and by watching Werner Gagne's American Wrestling Association on television. But Muraco was not just a fan, he was a legitimate athlete. At Punahou School, the same prestigious institution that would later produce Barack Obama, Muraco became the Hawaii State Amateur Wrestling Champion in 1967. He had the size, the athleticism, and the technical foundation to succeed in multiple sports. Football programs came calling, but Muraco had his heart set on following his childhood heroes into the squared circle. The decision would prove to be the right one. Muraco had the look, standing over 6 feet tall with a naturally muscular physique that commanded attention. He had legitimate wrestling credentials, and he had the intelligence to understand that professional wrestling required more than just physical ability. It required psychology. It required the ability to tell a story in the ring. It required making people believe. In 1970, Muraco began his professional wrestling journey, and like all aspiring wrestlers of that era, he had to pay his dues traveling through the territories. The territorial system was unforgiving. Young wrestlers bounced from promotion to promotion, learning their craft while earning barely enough to survive. There were no guaranteed contracts, no healthcare, no safety net. You either figured it out or you went home. Muraco figured it out. He spent his first year learning the business in Vancouver, Portland, Florida, and Los Angeles, absorbing knowledge from anyone willing to teach him. He learned how to work the crowd in small buildings. He learned how to protect himself and his opponents. He learned the unwritten rules of the locker room. Most importantly, he learned that success in this business came from making the other guy look good. His first major break came with Werner Gagne's American Wrestling Association in Minneapolis. That promotion was one of the most respected territories in the country, a proving ground for future superstars. Wrestling as a babyface, Muraco often tag-teamed with a young man from Fiji named Jimmy Snuka. Together, they battled the likes of Larry Hennig, Ivan Koloff, and Dusty Rhodes. The partnership was successful, and both men were learning valuable lessons about the business. Little did either man know that years later they would become bitter rivals in front of sellout crowds at Madison Square Garden. By 1973, Muraco had grown tired of the Minnesota winters and left for Roy Shire's San Francisco NWA territory. It was there that Muraco began to find his true calling as a heel. The warm weather reminded him of home, and the territory allowed him to develop the arrogant persona that would define his career. In 1974, Muraco moved to championship wrestling from Florida, where he was frequently compared to NWA World Champion Jack Briscoe due to their physical resemblance. The comparison was not just about looks. On May 28, 1974, in a match against Briscoe himself, Muraco managed to reverse the world champion's devastating figure termed four-leg lock. Though he lost the match by disqualification, that single moment of reversal made him a star. Fans and promoters alike realized this young Hawaiian had something special. After brief stints in Texas and Georgia, Muraco returned to California in 1975 and captured his first singles championship, the NWA America's Heavyweight title. He then won the San Francisco version of the NWA World Tag Team Championship with Masked Invader No. 1. More importantly, San Francisco taught him how to truly work as a villain. From 1977 through 1981, Muraco shuttled between Florida, San Francisco, and his native Hawaii, honing his craft with each stop. He was becoming a journeyman in the best sense of the word, a wrestler who could be dropped into any territory and immediately contribute at a high level. In Florida, he became involved in two angles that showcased his ability to generate heat, unlike almost anyone else in the business. Championship Wrestling from Florida, run by the legendary Eddie Graham, was known for its sophisticated storytelling and willingness to push boundaries. It was the perfect environment for Muraco to develop his character. In 1979, a masked villain called the Magnificent M appeared in Championship Wrestling from Florida. The territory had seen masked men before, but something about this one felt different. Dangerous. He moved with a swagger that suggested he knew he was better than everyone around him. His work in the ring was crisp, professional, devastating. When he was eventually unmasked and revealed to be Muraco, it came as little surprise to anyone who had been paying attention. What did shock the audience was his appearance. Muraco had shaved his head completely bald, revealing a gleaming scalp that made him look absolutely menacing. In an era before Stone Cold Steve Austin popularized the bald look, this was genuinely shocking. Wrestlers simply did not shave their heads unless they were playing a specific character type. Muraco did it simply to generate heat, to make himself look more intimidating, more different. The gamble paid off enormously. Then, in 1980, Muraco engaged in a feud that would help create a future star. A young rookie named Barry Windham had just arrived in the territory, and bookers Buddy Rogers and Eddie Graham decided to use Muraco to establish him. The two legends created the Magnificent Muraco character in full, giving Don the swagger and arrogance that would define his World Wrestling Federation run. They understood that a great heel could make a young babyface into a star, and Muraco was the perfect man for the job. In one of the most brutal moments of the feud, the bigger and more experienced Muraco piled, rove the young Windham on the concrete floor outside the ring. The angle was unforgettable, a genuine shocker that made fans hate Muraco with a passion while simultaneously making them invested in Windham's journey for revenge. When Windham eventually got his payback, he was made. The feud is still remembered as one of the greatest in Florida wrestling history. In 1981, Muraco finally arrived in the World Wrestling Federation, debuting on February 24th in Allentown, Pennsylvania, with a victory over Steve King. The World Wrestling Federation, run by Vince McMahon Sr. at the time, was the premier territory on the East Coast, home to Madison Square Garden, and the wrestling capital of the world. The company paired him with the Grand Wizard, one of the greatest managers of all time, and positioned him immediately as a top heel. The Grand Wizard, whose real name was Ernie Roth, had managed some of the biggest names in the business. His addition to Muraco's corner immediately signaled that the company had big plans for this Hawaiian newcomer. The target was clear from day one. Pedro Morales, the beloved Puerto Rican star, held the Intercontinental Championship, and Muraco was coming for it. Morales was a legend, a former World Wrestling Federation champion who had held that title for nearly 3 years. He was beloved by the large Hispanic fan base in the Northeast. Taking the title from him would instantly make Muraco one of the most hated men in wrestling. On June 20th, 1981, just 4 months after his debut, Muraco defeated Pedro Morales in Philadelphia to capture the World Wrestling Federation Intercontinental Championship. The victory marked the beginning of a blood feud that would see both men try to destroy each other over the next several months. Their matches were wars, violent brawls that pushed the boundaries of what was acceptable on wrestling television. Muraco was not just any heel champion. He was arrogant beyond belief, constantly demanding respect while engaging in the most disrespectful behavior imaginable. In one infamous match, he brought a submarine sandwich to the ring and proceeded to eat it while dominating his outmatched opponent. The crowd was apoplectic with rage. Here was this villain, this beach bum from Hawaii, treating their sport like a joke while wearing the championship they held sacred. He would dedicate his finishing move, the devastating piledriver, to whomever he was feuding with at the time. An extra twist of the knife before ending their night in agony. Before The Undertaker made it famous, Muraco was using the tombstone piledriver as a devastating weapon, dropping opponents directly on their heads with sickening impact. Fans greeted him with chants of beach bum, mocking his Hawaiian origins. Muraco leaned into the hatred. He fed off it. He was magnificent, and he knew it. On November 23, 1981, Morales finally got his revenge in a Texas death match at Madison Square Garden. The bout was a bloody, brutal war that saw both men push their bodies to the absolute limit. When Muraco attempted to use brass knuckles, Morales ducked under the swing, grabbed the foreign object, and blasted Muraco in the skull to regain his championship. The loss did not diminish Muraco's standing. That same year, he wrestled World Wrestling Federation champion Bob Backlund multiple times, including a grueling 60-minute draw on October 24th. Muraco was proving he belonged with the absolute elite of professional wrestling. Muraco spent portions of 1982 working various territories while remaining affiliated with the World Wrestling Federation. He partnered with Roddy Piper in Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, wrestled under a mask as Dr. X in Georgia Championship Wrestling, and competed in New Japan Pro Wrestling's annual MSG League tournament. The experience kept him sharp and added to his already impressive repertoire. Muraco returned to the World Wrestling Federation full-time in the fall of 1982. Now managed by the legendary Captain Lou Albano, Lou was one of the most colorful figures in wrestling history, a man who would later achieve mainstream fame managing Cyndi Lauper and appearing in numerous television shows and movies. His partnership with Muraco added another layer of entertainment to an already compelling package. On January 22, 1983, he recaptured the Intercontinental Championship from Pedro Morales, beginning a title reign that would last an incredible 385 days. It was the longest Intercontinental Championship reign in company history at that point, a record that demonstrated just how much the World Wrestling Federation valued Muraco as their top heel. But it was not Morales who would define this reign. It was his former tag team partner from the AWA days. Jimmy Superfly Snuka had broken away from Albano's management and transformed into one of the most beloved babyfaces in World Wrestling Federation history. His high-flying style was unlike anything fans had ever seen. When Snuka set his sights on Muraco's championship, the stage was set for something special. These two men knew each other intimately from their AWA days. They understood each other's strengths and weaknesses. That familiarity translated into incredible chemistry in the ring. Throughout 1983, Muraco and Snuka battled across the territory. Their matches were wars, violent affairs that saw both men leave everything in the ring. The crowds were electric for every encounter, desperate to see the Superfly capture the championship from the arrogant Muraco. But Muraco kept finding ways to retain, whether through interference, cheating, or simply outworking his opponent. Muraco also had bloody feuds with Bob Backlund, Tony Atlas, and Rocky Johnson during this period, but nothing compared to his rivalry with the Superfly. The hatred felt real, the violence felt genuine, and fans could not get enough. The feud culminated on October 17, 1983, in a steel cage match at Madison Square Garden. The bout was scheduled as the definitive end to their rivalry, with Muraco's Intercontinental Championship on the line. The Garden was sold out. The atmosphere was electric. Everyone in the building knew they were about to witness something historic. The match itself was a bloodbath. Both men wore crimson masks, their blood mixing with sweat under the harsh arena lights. The steel cage amplified every impact, every collision with the unforgiving chain link. Muraco, ever the crafty heel, used every advantage the cage provided, grinding Snuka's face against the steel and slamming him into the posts. Snuka appeared to have the match won after connecting with a devastating diving headbutt, but the impact sent Muraco sailing through the open cage door. He tumbled to the arena floor, and by the rules of a cage match, he had technically escaped. The referee had no choice but to award the victory and the continued championship to the Magnificent Muraco. The crowd was stunned. Their hero had dominated the final moments of the match, But through sheer luck, the villain had escaped with his prize. But Snuka was not finished. Enraged at the cheap victory, he dragged Muraco back into the cage. With his fallen enemy spread out on the canvas, Snuka began to climb. Higher and higher he went, past the ropes, past the turnbuckles, until he stood atop the 15-foot steel structure. The garden fell silent for a heartbeat as 20,000 fans rose from their seats. Then Snuka raised his hands, forming his trademark "I love you" sign with his fingers, and leapt into the void. His body soared through the air before crashing down onto Muraco with a superfly splash that shook the entire building. Cameras flashed by the thousands. The crowd erupted into absolute bedlam. History was made in that single perfect moment. In the audience that night sat a young Mick Foley, who would later say that seeing Snuka fly from that cage inspired him to pursue professional wrestling. Tommy Dreamer was there, Bubba Ray Dudley was there, the Sandman was there. An entire generation of ECW performers traced their inspiration to that single moment. A moment that only happened because Don Muraco was there to catch Snuka's dive. Muraco himself would later recall that when Snuka leaped from the top of the cage, it ushered in a new era of high-risk maneuvers. Before that night, jumping from the top rope was considered dangerous enough. After that night, the sky became the limit. On February 11, 1984, Muraco's remarkable 385-day reign came to an end when he lost the Intercontinental Championship to Tito Santana at the Boston Garden. After a series of unsuccessful rematches, Muraco took a brief hiatus from the World Wrestling Federation in August 1984, working briefly for NWA Polynesian and competing in Japan. Don Muraco returned to the World Wrestling Federation in 1985 with a new manager at his side. Mr. Fuji, the devious former 5-time World Wrestling Federation Tag Team Champion, guided Muraco through the next phase of his career. Fuji brought a different energy than Lou Albano or the Grand Wizard. He was calculating, sneaky, and always had a trick up his sleeve. His partnership with Muraco would prove to be one of the most entertaining in wrestling history. Although he did not appear on the first WrestleMania, Muraco immediately established himself as a top contender for Hulk Hogan's World Wrestling Federation Championship. Over the spring of 1985, he headlined 3 consecutive Madison Square Garden cards against the Hulkster, a testament to how highly the company valued him. In the midst of Hulkamania, when Hogan was the biggest star in wrestling history, Muraco was selected as his primary challenger. That says everything about how the World Wrestling Federation viewed his abilities. The matches were brutal affairs. In one particularly memorable encounter in May 1985, Muraco attacked Hogan before the bell and ripped off his shirt. That sent Hogan into such a rage that he started throwing chairs and headbutts, before launching Muraco headfirst into the steel post and busting him open immediately. Hogan bit at the open wound while the crowd went absolutely ballistic. The match ended when Fuji threw salt in Hogan's eyes, causing a disqualification, but the intensity was undeniable. Their feud culminated on June 21, 1985, in a steel cage match that saw both men blade heavily. The Hulkster wore all white that night, which turned crimson as the match progressed. Both men went through their complete arsenals before Hogan escaped the cage to retain his championship. Muraco had proved he could hang with the biggest star in wrestling. Their feud was a classic example of old-school booking, building across multiple months before culminating in a definitive blow-off inside the cage. Muraco would later recall those matches fondly, noting that while they never had a really long feud, they had 3 or 4 memorable shots in a cage that fans still remember to this day. He worked with Hogan all over the country and all over the world. Just weeks later, on July 8, 1985, Muraco achieved another milestone. At Sullivan Stadium in Foxborough, Massachusetts, he won the first ever King of the Ring tournament by defeating the Iron Sheik in the finals. Before that, he had conquered Junkyard Dog, Les Thornton, and Pedro Morales to reach the championship match. While the King of the Ring was simply a house show tournament at the time, with no television coverage, Muraco's victory marked him as the inaugural king, a piece of wrestling history that can never be taken from him. Names like Stone Cold Steve Austin, Bret Hart, and Edge would later win the tournament and use it as a launching pad to superstardom. But Don Muraco was the first. For the remainder of 1985, Muraco engaged in a heated rivalry with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. The feud began when Muraco attacked Steamboat during a televised match that never officially started. In one of the most shocking angles of the era, Muraco and Fuji used Steamboat's karate belt to hang him from the top rope, leaving the Dragon dangling with his feet off the ground as Muraco whipped him mercilessly. The image was brutal, even by the 1980s standards. Tito Santana and Junkyard Dog eventually made the save, but the damage was done. Fans were desperate to see Steamboat get his revenge. The feud produced some excellent matches and helped establish Steamboat as a top babyface in the company. Their rivalry ended on the January 4, 1986 edition of Saturday Night's Main Event, when Steamboat and Junkyard Dog defeated Muraco and Fuji in tag team action. Throughout 1985 and 1986, Muraco showcased another side of his personality through the comedy skits he performed with Mr. Fuji on the World Wrestling Federation late-night talk show Tuesday Night Titans. The most famous of these was Fuji Vice, a hilariously terrible parody of the hit television series Miami Vice. The skits featured Muraco and Fuji playing incompetent detectives who accidentally stumble into solving crimes. The production values were intentionally awful, with both men clearly reading cue cards and Fuji frequently breaking character to laugh. A frustrated director would repeatedly lose his temper as everything fell apart around him. These comedy segments, which also included Fuji General, a parody of the soap opera General Hospital, and Fuji Bandito, a Western spoof, showed that Muraco had range beyond simply being a menacing heel. He could make audiences laugh just as easily as he could make them hate him. In 1986, Muraco aligned himself with adorable Adrian Adonis and cowboy Bob Orton in their ongoing feud with Roddy Piper. This led to Orton and Muraco becoming a regular tag team. On March 29, 1987, the duo competed in the opening match of WrestleMania 3 at the Pontiac Silverdome in front of a reported 93,173 fans. They lost to the Can-Am Connection of Tom Zenk and Rick Martel, but Muraco had the distinction of competing at one of the most legendary wrestling events in history. In July 1987, a falling out between Muraco and Orton led to a feud between the former partners and a surprising face turn for Muraco. He won almost every match in the feud until Orton left the World Wrestling Federation later that year. In November 1987, Muraco solidified his babyface status by saving superstar Billy Graham from a 3-on-1 beating at the hands of Butch Reed, One Man Gang, and Slick. Graham became Muraco's new manager, and Muraco underwent a complete transformation. He adopted Graham's signature tie-dye attire and changed his nickname from Magnificent Muraco to The Rock. Yes, about a decade before Dwayne Johnson made the name famous, Don Muraco was The Rock. Interestingly, Muraco had once wrestled Dwayne's father, Rocky Johnson, during his Intercontinental Championship reigns. Muraco replaced the injured Graham on Team Hogan at the first Survivor Series and performed admirably at the first Royal Rumble, where he eliminated 3 wrestlers and finished as one of the final 4 competitors. He later reached the quarterfinals of the World Wrestling Federation Championship tournament at WrestleMania 4 before losing to the $1 Million Man. Years later, Muraco admitted he did not enjoy his babyface run, believing he was far more effective as a heel. He was probably right. In his final months with the World Wrestling Federation, Muraco feuded with Greg Valentine and lost to Dino Bravo at the inaugural SummerSlam in 1988. His World Wrestling Federation career ended shortly thereafter when he was released following a disagreement with management. His final match for the company came during a tour of Italy in October 1988. After leaving the World Wrestling Federation, Muraco kept working. The road had been his life for nearly 2 decades, and he was not ready to stop. He won the Stampede Wrestling North American Heavyweight Championship by defeating Makhan Singh in Canada. He wrestled AWE World Champion Larry Zbyszko to a double disqualification, proving he could still compete at the highest levels. He competed for Herb Abrams' Universal Wrestling Federation, feuding with a young Cactus Jack who would later become Mick Foley, the same kid who had hitchhiked to see Muraco wrestle at Madison Square Garden years earlier. In 1992, Muraco joined Eastern Championship Wrestling, the Philadelphia-based promotion that would later transform into the Extreme ECW. On September 30th, 1992, he defeated his old rival Jimmy Snuka to become ECW heavyweight champion. Nearly a decade after their legendary cage match, the two men were still capable of drawing an audience. Muraco would hold the title twice, losing it to Mr. Sandman in November 1992 before regaining it in April 1993. During his time in ECW, he formed an unlikely alliance with Snuka as part of Eddie Gilbert's Hot Stuff International stable. The two former bitter enemies were now partners, a testament to the respect they had developed for each other over the years. He successfully defended the ECW Championship against Tommy Cairo, the Metal Maniac, and the Sandman in rematches. He eventually lost the title to another familiar face, Tito Santana, in October 1993. On May 23, 1993, Muraco even appeared at WCW's Slamboree event, teaming with Dick Murdoch and Jimmy Snuka against Wahoo McDaniel, Jim Brunzell, and Blackjack Mulligan in a Legends match that ended in a no contest, when the whole thing devolved into a wild brawl. In 1994, Muraco traveled to Japan to compete for Wrestle Association R under the masked identity of Aka Oni. He competed in 13 matches for the promotion before wrapping up his international run. At 45 years old, he could still go when the moment demanded it. After retiring from active competition in 1995, Muraco returned to his beloved Hawaii. He found work as a longshoreman, becoming a member of ILWU Local 142. The man who had main evented Madison Square Garden and WrestleMania was now loading cargo ships, perfectly content with a simpler life. But wrestling never completely leaves your blood. In 2003, Muraco co-founded Hawaii Championship Wrestling with local television producer Linda Bade. The promotion ran until 2008, with Muraco serving as the storyline commissioner. His son Joe also competed for the promotion, following in his father's footsteps. On August 27, 2005, at Wrestle Reunion 2, Don teamed with Joe to defeat another father and son combination, Bob and Brad Armstrong. It was a special moment, 2 generations of Muracos standing tall together. In 2004, Don Muraco received the ultimate recognition when he was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. The man who inducted him was none other than Mick Foley, the same young fan who had hitchhiked to Madison Square Garden in 1983 to watch Muraco defend his championship against Jimmy Snuka. The symbolism was perfect. 21 years after that fateful night, Foley had become one of the biggest stars in wrestling history, a 3-time WWE champion and best-selling author. He traced it all back to that moment when Snuka flew from the cage onto Muraco's body. Foley spoke about how that night changed his life, how watching Snuka fly from the cage inspired him to pursue wrestling. He credited Muraco for being part of one of the most important moments in wrestling history. Standing on that stage, accepting his Hall of Fame ring, Muraco must have reflected on the incredible journey that had brought him from the beaches of Hawaii to the pantheon of wrestling immortals. Muraco was also inducted into the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame in 2014 as part of the Modern Era wing, further cementing his legacy as one of the true greats of his generation. In 2007, Muraco had the honor of inducting his former manager and friend Mr. Fuji into the WWE Hall of Fame. The two men who had created Comedy Gold together on Tuesday Night Titans, who had terrorized Ricky Steamboat and battled Hulk Hogan, shared one final moment in the spotlight together. Don Muraco's career statistics speak for themselves. 2-time World Wrestling Federation Intercontinental Champion, with a combined reign of over 540 days. Two-time ECW heavyweight champion, the inaugural King of the Ring, Stampede North American heavyweight champion, WWE Hall of Famer, Professional Wrestling Hall of Famer. But numbers only tell part of the story. Muraco was there for some of the most important moments in wrestling history. He was the villain who helped make Jimmy Snuka's cage dive iconic. He was the opponent who pushed Hulk Hogan in bloody steel cage wars during the height of Hulkamania. He was the heel who helped establish Ricky Steamboat as a top babyface. He was the veteran who gave Barry Windham his first real feud in Florida. His in-ring work was excellent, particularly before his later run when he admittedly relied too heavily on the power of substances that were unfortunately common in that era. His promos were outstanding, delivering lines with an intensity and arrogance that made fans genuinely hate him. His willingness to entertain through comedy skits like Fuji Vice showed his range. Most importantly, Muraco inspired a generation. Mick Foley, Tommy Dreamer, Bubba Ray Dudley, Devon Dudley, The Sandman. All of them have cited that October 1983 cage match as a defining moment in their decision to become wrestlers. Without that match, without Muraco laying there to take Snuka's legendary splash, the hardcore wrestling revolution of the 1990s might have looked very different. Today, Don Muraco lives in Sunset Beach, Hawaii, with his wife Sharon, whom he married on December 31, 1981. They have been together for over 4 decades. He has 3 children, including his son Joe, who followed him into the wrestling business. The Magnificent Muraco may not be remembered as fondly as some of his contemporaries. He was not the hero, he was not the one flying through the air. He was the villain, the heel, the man fans loved to hate. But without great villains, there can be no great heroes. Don Muraco was one of the greatest villains professional wrestling has ever known, and for that, he deserves to be remembered as truly magnificent. Like and subscribe for more Territory Wrestling videos. Until next time.